There are a lot of beliefs and opinions out there. Before you accept a belief that attempts to discredit another belief as your own, you must study the evidence for both beliefs and weigh them out. The belief that has more support has a higher propensity to be true. If you accept the belief of lesser evidence, you would just be accepting it as your own because it fulfills what you want to believe. When opinions that support your own belief are stated, they are blindly accepted upon little or no evidence. Whereas, if a belief that is well supported contradicts your belief, you will demand enormous evidence. The movie Zeitgeist attempted to associate parallels between Christianity and ancient mythologies, but such assumed associations were only briefly mentioned, and the details of their so-called association were not taken into consideration. If these details had been taken into consideration, the following facts would have popped up. For starters, the movie stated that the story of the flood from the Bible originated from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Actually, there are other records of the flood besides that of the Epic of Gilgamesh scattered all over the world. The fact that there are universal ancient records of a great flood supports the evidence that it must have been true. If the flood really did happen, as the Bible states, then of course there would be records of it from the nations that resulted from its survivors, and evidence of this is seen. As for the attempted parallel between Moses' birth and Sargon's birth, Moses and Sargon shared the concept of being placed in a basket, but the rest of their life stories are different. In addition, we know that Moses existed from the historian Artapanus of Alexandria from the 2nd century BC. In relation to the Ten Commandments being a copy of spell 125 of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. First, the Egyptian Book of the Dead was a tablet that was read when one dies, and the spell 125 are things the dead will say when they meet their gods. In it, they state 47 things that they have not done. There is no relation to this in the Ten Commandments. Even international governmental laws state you should not steal or kill. In addition, the fact that there are 147 negative confessions from the Book of the Dead gives probability a high chance for at least 4 of them being included in the Ten Commandments. The movie also stated that there are other parallels between accepted Christian traditions and Egyptian beliefs, such as baptism, crucifixion, resurrection, Ark of the Covenant, circumcision, Holy Communion, Easter, Christmas, Passover, etc. If so, where do these relations exist? Since none were validly stated, none should be assumed. However, there are apparent similarities between Catholic Christianity and paganism, the reason for which is presented in the following. Justin Martyr, philosopher, theologian, and an early apologist for Christianity, sought to reconcile Christian doctrine with pagan culture. Catholic Christianity, in order to gain converts from pagans, sought to invent similarities with pagans. When we say that the Word, who is the firstborn of God, was produced without sexual union, and that He, Jesus Christ, our teacher, was crucified and died and rose again and ascended into heaven, we propound nothing different from what you believe regarding those whom you esteem the sons of Jupiter. In that we say He made whole the lame, the paralytic, and those born blind, we seem to say what is very similar to the deeds said to have been done by Aesculapius. Justin Martyr was Catholic, not Christian. Near the time of Justin Martyr, the Catholic Church associated their beliefs with the pagans of that time to gain converts and encourage fellowship with their new doctrines. Catholic beliefs that were adopted from paganism are Christmas being on the 25th of December, Sunday as the holy day of worship, the use and reverence to statues and icons, and many more. The movie Zeitgeist also tried to show that the story of Jesus was a copy of Old Testament stories, mainly that of Joseph. Pointing out the parallels between Jesus and Joseph in the movie does not support that some of Christ's traits were merely a copy of Joseph's. Joseph was the son of Jacob and Rachel, unlike Christ who was born of a virgin. Joseph was born by a miracle in that God opened Rachel's womb. As for Joseph being among 12 brothers in relation to Christ's 12 disciples, this should be attributed to Jacob, the father of the 12 brothers, rather than Joseph, who had 11 brothers. Silver was the currency used to buy people in ancient times. So the attempted relation of Joseph being bought by a sum of silver and Jesus being betrayed for a sum of silver has no weight on this issue. As for the similarity between Joseph and Jesus having miracle births, this should have been taken into account in the light of all the 7 miracle births prior to Christ. These were Isaac, Jacob and Esau, Joseph, Samson, Samuel, the Shunammite woman's son, and John the Baptist. The video discredits some historians who have recorded the existence of Christ as not reliable and barely mentioning him. Tacitus in his Annals mentions that Christ was crucified under Pontius Pilate and gives detailed descriptions of Nero's persecutions, which are also mentioned in several places in the New Testament. Flavius Josephus, the 1st century Jewish historian, makes mention of Jesus, John the Baptist, and James, the brother of Jesus. Recent scholarship has indicated that at least most, if not all, of Josephus's mention of Jesus is authentic. Other references to New Testament figures corroborate the Christian gospel writers. Scholars note that the New Testament corroborates Josephus in minute detail. Keep in mind that Josephus wrote his history after the time of the New Testament. In other words, both sources were written independently, yet both agree with each other. So Josephus testifies to the historical reliability of many passages in the New Testament. The claim that the writings of Josephus have proven to be a forgery is a blatant lie. We know of many other early references to Christ by pagan writers, but there are also thousands of manuscripts from the 1st and 2nd centuries written by Christians. The fact that early Christians recorded their own history does not discount their reliability. Christianity is not a religion that has its origin in shadowy legend. Rather, it has definite historical roots, strong personalities, and a tremendous amount of source documents to prove it. Other 1st and 2nd century writers who wrote about Jesus as the Son of God, the promised Messiah, and the Lord of creation are Clement, the Bishop of Rome, the writer of the Epistle of Barnabas, Polycarp, the Bishop of Smyrna, a student of the Apostle John, Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch, Irenaeus, the 2nd century Bishop of Lyons, Tertullian, the 2nd century apologist, Clement, the 2nd century Bishop of Alexandria. The Christ represented in the Bible did exist, and history bears witness to this man who captivated the world for thousands of years till today with his inspiring teachings of life. The attacks by the Zeitgeist movie on Christianity and religion as a whole has by design been used to discredit truth with lies for the purpose of misleading souls to their ruin. People tend to hold any statement that supports their belief as evidence, even if the statements are lies. Look into the points presented in the Zeitgeist response and study for yourself what is true. There should be held into account historical evidence, unlike other people's opinions as shared in the Zeitgeist movie.